What if I told you that somewhere, hidden beneath centuries of silence, there might exist a manuscript written or dictated by Jesus himself? Before we open this door together, do me a small favor. Take just a few seconds to hit that like button. Let me know in the comments if you believe such a thing could be real. And do not forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next mystery waiting in the shadows. Now, if you are ready, let us step back 2,000 years. Jerusalem, at the turn of the 1st century, was a city unlike any other. Narrow streets echoed with merchants shouting prices, the heavy boots of Roman soldiers striking stone, and the solemn prayers rising from the Temple Mount. Yet in the midst of this tension, there walked a teacher whose words stirred crowds and frightened rulers. His stories were simple, but his meaning shook empires. And as his followers grew, so did the danger. Now imagine one evening, perhaps after the Last Supper, or on a quiet night, when fear of betrayal already hung in the air. The disciples gather around a dim light, parchment in hand. Jesus, knowing his time was near, speaks words that were not meant for the masses, words he wanted preserved only for those who would one day understand. Words too fragile, too radical, or too dangerous to be read aloud in the streets of Jerusalem. The disciple dips a reed pen into ink, his hand trembling as he writes. Not miracles, not parables, but warnings, instructions, perhaps even truths about creation itself. The scroll is rolled, sealed with wax, and hidden before the authorities can seize it. A text that could alter everything, locked away where only whispers survive. Centuries pass. Empires rise and fall. The parchment is never found, or so we are told. But strange fragments surface in dusty markets. Old monks write of letters too holy for mortal lips. Travelers return from the deserts with tales of caves where the walls are marked with ancient prayers, and of jars that were sealed and never opened. Scholars debate whether these are myths, mistakes, or signs of something greater. And this is where the question becomes yours. If such a manuscript truly exists, what would it say? Would it confirm the faith you already carry? Or would it unravel the foundations of belief that billions have trusted for 2 millennia, and more importantly, if you were the one who held it in your hands, would you dare reveal it to the world? History has always been full of whispers. Not the kind shouted from rooftops, but soft, fleeting voices, scrolls rumored, letters half-remembered, stories scribbled in margins of books that someone later burned. And if you listen closely, those whispers seem to tell us that many more Gospels once existed than the 4 we know today. Think about it. The Gospel of Thomas, discovered in Egypt in 1945, contained sayings of Jesus no one had heard for centuries. The Gospel of Mary, hidden until fragments were uncovered in the late 19th century, gave us an entirely new voice, a woman disciple whose words had been erased from history. And then, of course, the Dead Sea Scrolls, thousands of fragments preserved in jars, discovered not by scholars, but by shepherds chasing a lost goat. Each time, what we thought we knew about the ancient world was shaken. So, is it really impossible that another manuscript still hides in the shadows? Imagine early Christian communities scattered across the Roman Empire. Each group treasured their own version of Jesus' words. Some spoke of cosmic mysteries, others of parables that never made it into the Bible. Over time, councils of bishops met, argued, and finally decided which stories were holy and which were dangerous. But who truly believes that dangerous writings were all destroyed? More likely, some were hidden, sealed away in monasteries, buried in desert caves, or smuggled across continents by monks and knights who feared they carried fire in their hands. Even the historical record gives us hints. A monk in Constantinople wrote in the 9th century of a scroll he claimed bore the very hand of the teacher. A crusader knight in the 12th century boasted that he had carried a fragment from Jerusalem back to Europe, only to vanish from the chronicles soon after. In the 19th century, a French explorer wrote in his diary about finding Aramaic parchment near Qumran. He died suddenly of poison before he could publish, and his notes disappeared into private collections. Are these stories coincidences, or are they threads of the same hidden tapestry? Here's my question for you. If such a manuscript truly existed and you had it in your hands, knowing that revealing it might shatter faith for millions, but hiding it would bury truth forever, what would you choose? The desert does not forget. Sand covers, wind erases, but underneath, the earth keeps its secrets. The Judean wilderness in particular has long been described as a vault, an endless library of stone and silence. For centuries, Bedouin tribes spoke of caves that held sacred writings, guarded not by locks, but by the sheer vastness of the desert itself. Think of the Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden away around the 1st century and untouched until 1947, when shepherds stumbled upon jars sealed for nearly 2 millennia. If that could happen once, why could not it happen again? Perhaps one more cave lies undiscovered only a few meters deeper, containing something far more astonishing, a manuscript in the hand of the teacher himself. Legends abound. Some tell of a monastery toppled by an earthquake in the 4th century. Beneath the rubble, they say, lay a jar sealed in wax, marked with strange symbols, and inside a scroll in Aramaic called the Words of the Living Light. The Bedouin tribe, so the story goes, swore an oath to protect it, passing the secret from father to son. Others whisper of Napoleon's soldiers in Egypt. One officer allegedly dug up a chest during a sandstorm. Inside were fragments of papyrus, but before he could present them, his regiment was ambushed and the box was lost forever. What fascinates scholars is not whether these stories are true, but why they persist. Why does every century produce another rumor of hidden scrolls? Why does every empire seem to stumble upon whispers of texts too dangerous to survive? Could it be that the desert is still guarding something, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? Now imagine yourself there. The sun has set, the air is cool, and you step into a narrow cave with nothing but a torch. Your light falls on walls etched with forgotten prayers. At the back lies a sealed jar, untouched for 2,000 years. Your hands tremble as you brush away the sand. Would you open it? And if you did, would you keep its contents to yourself? Or would you dare to let the world see what was never meant to be seen? Every secret needs a guardian. If a manuscript from Jesus truly existed, could it have survived these centuries without the help of a hidden brotherhood? History is filled with tales of secret orders, groups sworn to protect dangerous knowledge from kings, popes, and even from the public itself. Imagine a circle of disciples, not just the famous 12, but lesser-known followers who carried the burden of safeguarding truths that could not yet be spoken. Over time, these guardians might have formed a line, a chain of secrecy stretching across generations. They would hide the scroll in caves, move it from monastery to monastery, or encrypt its contents so that only the worthy could read it. Whispers of such brotherhoods echo through history. The Cathars of medieval France were accused of hiding lost words of Christ. The Knights Templar were rumored to possess relics and manuscripts taken from Jerusalem's Temple Mount. Even the mysterious Rosicrucians of the Renaissance claimed to guard ancient wisdom written in symbols no outsider could understand. Are these just legends or scattered reflections of a single, older truth? Picture it, a monk in a dark robe, standing watch by candlelight. In front of him, a wooden chest bound in iron. Inside, wrapped in cloth, lies the manuscript. He swears an oath never to reveal, never to destroy, but only to protect. Centuries later, another guardian repeats the vow. And so the chain continues, until one day, perhaps in our time, the secret slips through a weak link. The real question is, if such a brotherhood existed, did they protect the manuscript for the sake of faith, or to keep power in their own hands? And if they still exist today, what would they do to stop us from asking these very questions? Not all early Christians believed the same things. Long before there was a single official church, dozens of groups told their own stories of who Jesus was and what he taught. Among them were the Gnostics, mystics who claimed that salvation came not from blind obedience but from hidden knowledge, or gnosis. The Gnostics preserved writings that shocked later generations. In their texts, Jesus sometimes laughs on the cross, as if his suffering was an illusion. In others, he teaches his disciples secrets of the cosmos, describing invisible realms, spiritual hierarchies, and the spark of divine light hidden within every human soul. These ideas were branded heresy by church councils, but they give us a glimpse into a world of Christianity far stranger, and perhaps far closer to the mystical heart of the teacher than most of us realize. So what if the lost manuscript we are chasing was not a conventional gospel, but something even more radical? What if it contained teachings meant only for a select few, teachings that could transform how we see ourselves, our world, and even God? Archaeological finds confirm how much has been lost. The Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt, discovered in 1945, revealed whole books of Gnostic wisdom hidden in jars for 1,600 years. Why hide them? Because their ideas threatened the powerful. Because their vision of Jesus was not one of control, but of freedom. Now, imagine the whispers of those voices echoing across the centuries. Imagine a single scroll, written not to preach but to reveal, words that could unlock the very fabric of existence. If that scroll still exists, buried somewhere in sand or stone, how would the world react if it were uncovered? Would we embrace it? Or burn it once more? Suppose the manuscript contained more than words. Suppose hidden among its lines were codes, diagrams, even maps. Ancient cultures often blended myth, astronomy, and scripture. So why not imagine that Jesus, too, left behind teachings encoded in the heavens? For centuries, people have studied the skies for signs of destiny. The Magi, following a star to Bethlehem. Early Christians carving symbols of constellations into catacomb walls. And in the Gnostic texts, cryptic references to the harmony of the spheres and the music of the stars hint that the cosmos itself was seen as a divine message. Could the lost manuscript contain instructions to read that message? Some scholars already suspect connections. The Gospel of Matthew speaks of a star heralding Christ's birth. Ancient Jewish mysticism describes creation through numbers and celestial patterns. And early Christian mystics believed that heaven and earth were bound together in a great cosmic web. If Jesus left a scroll combining his words with such a vision, it would not be merely scripture. It would be a map, guiding humanity through history and into the future. Imagine holding such a scroll. You unroll it slowly, and between the lines of Aramaic text you see diagrams of constellations, coded numbers, perhaps even coordinates. What would they point to? A hidden place on earth, a prophecy yet to unfold, or perhaps a warning that humanity's fate is written not in palaces or parliaments but in the stars themselves. And then comes the question, if you discovered that the manuscript held a cosmic map, would you dare follow it? Would you set out into the desert, guided not by roads but by the constellations overhead? And what if the map did not lead to treasure, but to a truth so vast it could break your world apart? Every legend becomes more convincing when paired with a modern mystery. And there is one story, whispered among academics, of a scholar who may have come closer than anyone to uncovering the hidden manuscript, only to disappear without a trace. He was a linguist, fluent in Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek, obsessed with the tiniest scraps of papyrus found in desert caves. His colleagues laughed at his obsession, but he believed that scattered fragments pointed to something greater. According to his notes, he once claimed that a pattern existed across multiple finds, phrases that did not belong in any known gospel, references to teachings never recorded elsewhere. In the late 20th century, he traveled to the Judean desert, funded by a quiet donor whose identity was never revealed. For months he dug, catalogued, and searched among ruins no one else cared about. Then came a final letter to a colleague. "I believe I have found the trail. If this is true, history itself is about to change." Days later, he vanished. His camp was abandoned, journals scattered, equipment left behind. No body was ever found. Rumors spread quickly. Some say he stumbled on a cave and was silenced by those who wanted the secret buried. Others whisper that he staged his own disappearance, living in hiding with knowledge too dangerous to reveal. A few believe he did find the manuscript, read it, and what he saw inside was enough to make him walk away from the world forever. And here's the unsettling part. Fragments of his research resurfaced years later in a private library in Europe. Handwritten translations of passages no one could verify. One of them read, "The kingdom is not above or below. It is within you, and it cannot be taken away." So let me ask you, if a modern scholar truly touched the edge of this secret and then vanished, was he silenced? Or did he choose silence himself? Whenever lost gospels are mentioned, one name always surfaces: the Vatican. For centuries, critics and conspiracists alike have accused the Church of hiding dangerous texts deep within its archives. And while much of this is speculation, even official historians admit that the Vatican Library contains thousands of manuscripts never shown to the public. Consider the stakes. A single document that contradicted the Gospels could undermine 2 millennia of tradition, authority, and power. No empire in history has willingly surrendered its foundation. Would the Church be any different? Whispers abound, secret rooms beneath street Peters, shelves stacked with forbidden writings, and cardinals who know of their existence but will never speak of them. Some claim the lost gospel of Jesus lies there, its pages read only by a handful of men sworn to secrecy. Others argue the Church itself never possessed it, but that it has worked tirelessly to suppress any trace that might point toward its survival. We know this much. Throughout history, the Church declared dozens of writings heretical, ordering them burned. Yet fragments survive. Whole communities were branded heretics for preserving teachings that challenged the hierarchy. If a manuscript directly from Jesus existed, would it be any different? Imagine standing in those subterranean archives, surrounded by books no human eye has seen in centuries. Somewhere behind locked doors lies a parchment that could shake the world. But here's the chilling question. If it were found today, would it ever be released, or would it vanish into the same shadow where countless other truths have disappeared? And now the question is yours. Do you think the Vatican is the guardian of hidden truths, or the jailer that keeps them from the world? Beneath the streets of Rome lies a labyrinth. The catacombs, tunnels carved by early Christians to bury their dead and secretly gather. Down there faith was whispered, not shouted. And some believe that whispers still linger. Travelers in the Middle Ages claimed that certain chambers bore strange markings, symbols not seen in any church above ground. Crosses intertwined with stars, inscriptions that hinted at teachings unfamiliar to official doctrine. What if some of these carvings were fragments, not of imagination, but of a hidden gospel passed along in secret? Legends tell of pilgrims who descended into the catacombs and returned, claiming they had seen the words of the teacher etched into stone. Others insisted that scrolls were once hidden there, sealed in niches alongside the bones of martyrs. The Church, of course, denies this. But could centuries of rumor all be false? Even in modern times, archaeologists occasionally find cryptic graffiti in forgotten tunnels, phrases in Greek and Latin that do not match biblical texts. One inscription reads, "Light was within him, and he placed it in us." Another says, "The living shall not perish, for the kingdom is already here." Are these merely poetic prayers, or echoes of something older, something suppressed? Imagine standing in those narrow passages, torchlight flickering, walls damp and close. You hear only your breath and the distant drip of water. Then your eye catches a phrase carved centuries ago, half hidden beneath dust, words that should not exist but do. Would you dismiss them as nonsense, or would you wonder if you had just brushed against the edge of the lost manuscript itself? For centuries, the idea of a hidden manuscript remained the domain of legends, monks, and dreamers. But what happens when faith collides with modern science? Today, we have tools that ancient scribes could never imagine. Carbon dating, multispectral imaging, DNA analysis of parchment, even artificial intelligence that can reconstruct faded letters invisible to the human eye. Imagine if a forgotten cave was uncovered tomorrow. Inside lies a sealed jar. Within it, a parchment still intact. Scientists would swarm like bees to honey. Labs would test the ink, measuring isotopes to prove whether it truly belonged to the 1st century. Forensic experts would analyze the handwriting, comparing it to every known script from Judea. Satellites could even scan the terrain to trace where the material was harvested. But here is where things get complicated. Suppose the results confirmed that the parchment dated to the lifetime of Jesus. Suppose the words matched the rhythm of his known sayings, yet carried teachings we have never heard. One passage speaks of forgiveness, another of cosmic secrets, and yet another warns of corruption in the very institutions that later bore his name. Would such a discovery be celebrated or suppressed? Governments might fear riots. Religious leaders might worry about the collapse of centuries of authority. Universities might fight over who gets to publish first. And through it all, one fragile text could hold humanity in suspense. So, if science placed undeniable proof into your hands that Jesus himself left behind a manuscript, would you trust the machines, the experts, the data, or would you still wonder if some truths are too powerful to be measured? Imagine it now. You are the one who holds the manuscript. The parchment feels brittle under your fingers, the ink faded but still alive. Every word you read shakes you. Some confirm what you already know: love your neighbor, forgive, hope. But then come lines that challenge everything: prophecies of empires yet unborn, warnings of corruption, and hints of a kingdom not of this world but of infinite worlds. What do? Do you publish it, letting billions read words never meant to reach their eyes, or do you lock it away, keeping faith steady but burying truth forever? This is not just fantasy. History is full of moments when individuals faced choices like this. Monks in Ireland preserved ancient texts while Europe burned. Scholars in Baghdad smuggled manuscripts during invasions. Even in the 20th century, scientists who split the atom had to ask themselves, should knowledge be unleashed, even if it could destroy? Your choice echoes theirs. Imagine the consequences. Publish it, and churches divide, believers argue, governments scramble to maintain order. Hide it, and you carry the weight of silence alone, knowing you have buried a message that could change humanity forever. And here's the haunting question. If the scroll really spoke with the voice of Jesus, was it ever meant to be revealed now, or was it always meant to wait for someone, maybe you, to decide when the world was ready? Prophecies have always fascinated humanity. They promise glimpses of tomorrow, whispers of fate, warnings we may or may not heed. Imagine if the hidden manuscript contained not just teachings, but a prophecy, one that was never meant to reach us until now. What would it say? Some claim the lost words speak of an age of darkness before a renewal of light. Others believe they warn of a world consumed by greed, technology, and endless wars. A few even suggest they describe a time when humanity reaches for the stars, only to discover that heaven is not above, but within. Throughout history, suppressed prophecies have surfaced. In medieval Europe, seers claimed the church hid predictions of plagues and wars. In the Renaissance, mystics whispered of visions that threatened the powerful. Could it be that Jesus himself foresaw not just his own death and resurrection, but the trials of centuries to come? Imagine reading lines that spoke directly to our world. When men build towers that reach the sky, and voices travel faster than the wind, beware, for the kingdom is tested. Would those words sound like nonsense, or would they feel eerily close to the world we live in today? And then comes the question, if such a prophecy were revealed, would it guide us or doom us? Would it bring hope or ignite chaos? And more importantly, would anyone believe it, or would it be dismissed as yet another apocalyptic fantasy? And so we return to the question that began our journey. What if Jesus left behind a hidden manuscript? We have followed the whispers of history, wandered the deserts, listened to the catacombs, and imagined the stars. We have heard of scholars who vanished, brotherhoods who guarded, and prophecies that may yet unfold. But in the end, no one can say for certain whether the manuscript exists. Maybe it is ash, burned long ago. Maybe it lies sealed in a cave, waiting for the right hands. Maybe it has already been found, locked away where the world will never see it. Or maybe, just maybe, it was never about parchment and ink at all. Perhaps the real manuscript lies within each of us, in the choices we make, the truths we dare to believe, and the courage we carry when the world is dark. But the power of the question remains. It reminds us that history is not finished, that faith is not fixed, and that truth may yet surprise us. So now I turn it to you. If such a manuscript were revealed tomorrow, what would you hope it said? Would you want it to confirm your faith, challenge it, or transform it into something entirely new? Let me know in the comments below what you think. And if you would like to hear more stories like this, mysteries that weave history, faith, and imagination together, make sure you subscribe and share this journey with others. Because in the end, whether or not the manuscript exists, the question will always linger. What truths are still waiting, hidden in plain sight, for us to discover?